Good morning. It is Brian here from the Art of Startup War. We are on with another phenomenal company. This time, real, pure, and simple. They are going into the future and they are saving lives. That's it. That's the way to judge this company today. If they be successful at saving lives, then you're going to believe they are the most phenomenal investment opportunity on the planet. That's exactly the journey we took. We first met these founders. We looked at their value proposition. We looked at one of the biggest health problems. I would actually argue the biggest health problem that is facing us as a planet today. It is not coronavirus. Coronavirus is a awful, terrible inconvenience that is killing people on a temporary level. This has killed people since the beginning of time. And these incredible founders have come up with a solution which takes advantage of all of the technology that is available to us today and tomorrow, with a view to coming as close as they possibly can to eradicating it. Now, I know all of you are going to be really interested right now because you're thinking, wow, I want to be a part of that. And first of all, I would like to welcome Ravi from HeARTHealth to the show. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Was that a strong enough introduction as to what your intentions are?
Absolutely. Uh, Cardiovascular disease have been around, the largest killer for decades, ever since tuberculosis has been eradicated. And any technology that we have thrown at it so far has not dethroned it from its ignominious perch.
And why is that, Ravi? Because you're right. Look, if we're talking about serial killers, cardiovascular disease is the greatest of all. It's the one that has continued killing decade after decade after decade after decade. And I've always wondered, like, why is it we haven't seemed to have made a dent in it? And that's even going through the years, as some of the points you've just made there, tuberculosis, or even like AIDS or other things that have come up, or even coronavirus. Like within 1 year or 2 years, I don't want to say we've dealt with it, but even this latest strain seems to be more of a flu type strain than a killer type strain. But whenever I look at cardiovascular disease, it seems to have not in any way been detracted from being the greatest massacre on the planet.
And the problem is simple. We have given technology in silos. What you alluded to in the introduction, we take diagnosis separately, we take the intervention separately, we take the long-term management and care separately, and the behavioral part separately. None of them integrated into a single whole, which is why we said that we are heart health, meaning with long-term goal of integrating all the available technology today to make that impact.
So I like this because what you've done is you're taking all of the areas within artificial intelligence and machine learning to say we have the technology. Look, if 40, 50 years ago we had the technology for a computer to be able to beat a human at chess, I think it's about time that we really started taking technology and not, as you said, in siloed, single factor attacks, but actually as one cohesive attack working together to be able to predict, to then tell, and then to adapt to be able to deal with it early enough before it becomes the killer that it's become today. But saying that is very easy. Doing that is not quite so easy. Can you maybe speak a little bit about to your background, and let's talk about some of the earlier years as you were building this and you came up with this, the original genesis of the idea, and some of the detractors that maybe would have taken away from you being able to get this home.
Thank you. It, uh, it all happened when I suffered heart failure in 2016. And when that happened, it took 3 or 4 months for them to actually conclude on the treatment path. Multiple modalities of imaging, right from what we do as the ECG to echocardiogram to MRI, and then all the pathological tests, going through all my records, including my genetics. My brothers and siblings were asked to undergo a test, echocardium, to make sure that this is not genetic in source. So that happened. Fortunately, I had a background from Siemens Medical Imaging. I actually built a whole CT image reconstruction system for Siemens in the mid 90s on the then new Intel Pentium and Windows NT. Windows NT launched in 94 and the Pentium in 95. And in 96 to 98, we built a whole image reconstruction system on a complex instruction set machine as against the RISC machines that were used then. And that was the background that I've done that. And even before that, uh, in a process steel industry, there was use of expert systems for process control. That was the then rage in the early 90s. So, coming from a background of expert systems, medical image reconstruction, and having this personal experience, harrowing experience, where for a month I was not allowed to move from my bed because without any reason, rhyme or reason, the heart failure stuck. I had no background, no blood pressure, no hypertension, uh, no substance abuse, nothing. So that's the background. With this degree, it started me ticking when one radiology company, a teleradiology company, said that they had tied up with a large AI in medical imaging company, global company. I said that, hey, this is what I have already done in my life, and I can actually build it for them. I went and asked the founder of that company. He is very well known in the US too, because they do a lot of this teleradiology work for big clients in the US. He said, yeah, sure. And then I went and asked my cardiologist, hey, will you help me? Knowing full well that the cardiologist was from the Cleveland Clinic and was a rising star at the Cleveland Clinic, uh, 25 years running the best cardiac care center in the world. I said, with a clinician to support me, that would be great. And he agreed because he was facing that problem. So that's how we got into this. I have a problem. He's facing a problem. I have seen the pain and I have the technical background. And I was the head of digital before when that was happening. So, digital technology, imaging technology, cardiovascular disease, a great clinician. I thought it was better to look at a solution rather than suffer the problem interminably.
Incredible. And what an awesome optimistic perspective on life. You get hit with one of the most unfair afflictions that could possibly happen to someone. You live your life well, you live your life healthily, you stay away from anything which is going to cause any kind of unnecessary cholesterol or any unnecessary attacks or just even just breakage or blockages within the system. And what happens is you get hit by the biggest serial killer on the planet. And your way of reacting to that is to say, I'm not just going to solve this for myself. I'm going to make sure that nobody else ever has to go through this again. And what's really encouraging, I think, for all of the listeners to hear, especially as investors, is you didn't approach this as an enthusiastic amateur. You approached this from one of the leading specialists within digital imaging in the world. And you realized that you had one additional position to fill, which was that position of a cardiovascular specialist, which you immediately went to get that person. So now you've got the dream team, you've got the A team. You know there's a problem. The problem is it shouldn't have happened to you, which means it shouldn't have happened to millions of other people, but it did happen. And that you need to go about and find a way to be able to predict it so that it can be avoided or dealt with in time so it doesn't happen to someone else. What's your next step? You're on the chessboard, you've moved your first pawn, you've decided you're going to do this, you've moved your knight to out as well by bringing in your other partner. What's your next move?
Yeah. So, having built this team, we identified a single problem, and then we are right now in the clinical validation phase. knowing full well how the medical technology can be brought to market. One of the critical aspects of building this is to be integrating it into the workflow. So we have consciously made sure, and this is one of the things that's being spoken of in AI and ML in the healthcare space, is that, well, it works fine in a lab setting with a lot of data for training, but can it be used on the field? Can a average cardiologist or a cardiovascular radiologist use it? They can't, because having four systems to look at, they're getting away from the patient. So one of the first things we did was to make sure that we are building a product that is part of the workflow of a cardiovascular radiologist and a cardiologist, linking with the packs and then with the hooks into the EHR, because that history that is recorded in the EHR, which we presently feel is a lot of data gathered for no useful purpose. And that's a common thing. How do you mine that information out and then connect the dots and provide that decision support that helps improve the quality of diagnosis, intervention, or care? So that's what we are doing right now. And then, as part of that, we are now doing the clinical validation, uh, a number of patients at multi-center one, to make sure that we are reaching the levels of accuracy and also of the time saving that improves the efficiency of these cardiologists and radiologists, and effectiveness, not only efficiency but also the effectiveness to impact the outcomes.
I love it. What was the first reaction? Because you speak about this like it was a beautiful, simple path full of roses and daffodils and vandal, with everybody saying, go Ravi, it's going to be great. But startup is never like that. And especially in an area, in a clinical area where people are highly skeptical. This isn't like just building a normal tech product where everybody says, go Mark Zuckerberg, you're going to change the world. This is an area in an industry where medical professions don't just require common sense. They don't just require logic. They require proven white papers that are going to tell them that other experts within their field fully back technologies that are coming out. And until you get to that moment, it's highly frustrating, even if you know and everybody else knows what you're doing makes sense. So, can you speak about some of the challenges in those early days and how you overcame them?
So this is 2016, 2017 when we started the idea. And then I roped in my CTO who had been doing medical imaging post-processing software using traditional machine vision techniques that are currently prevalent. It, and knowing that those techniques were giving only 50% of the results, that was the norm. We knew that AI could improve our deep learning, could improve the segmentation and results much better, but we needed the data. And to get the data, you needed the ethics clearances. From 2016 to 2018, it was a struggle trying to get people to sign up to share the patient data and the studies, patient studies, because each cardiac MRI is about 200 images and about video moving images, and to get them to share the data for our training the models and getting to tie up with all the global sources to include generalizability, which is Caucasian vertical data sets, Asian data sets, African American, African data sets, and the Mongoloid data sets. It took us a good 2 years. So we consciously did not incorporate till we had the data sources tied up. And that's something that we are not single source. At the RSNA in 2020, it was famously said that most AI models that are out in the field today are either taken with data sets from the Bay Area or from the East Coast. But we cracked that. We went consciously at that, given our background, and then we incorporated in 2019, and then started building the model. Got some quick results, and then that was when we went to the other customers to show them that hey, this is what is possible. And naturally, this is it. Yeah, but will it work in my environment? Will it work on my machine? There are a number of questions that were thrown open to us, and come back when you have a clinical validation. Now, it's just a chicken or egg problem at that point in time, but we hunkered down and then said that we will uh, build it out and take it to that clinical validation, produce those study results that help validate. And we are just at that threshold as we speak with the multi site clinical validation getting ready, and the results are phenomenally encouraging, given that we are getting the accuracy that we want and the time saving is reaching those levels. And cardiologists and radiologists are, are taking to it intuitively because we have been used to developing medical imaging UXs. So, given that background, we have tried to smoothly transition them from the way they were operating it to the way of using a decision support for cardiology. And that intuitive interfaces have been really appreciated. So, that's how we have taken each of those feedback in the last 5 years from the time of ideation to today to make sure that the product really is usable intuitively, much like an app on your iPhone today.
I love it. So, look, for everybody listening, it was really hard. Okay. It's really hard. Those 2 years where you're desperately going into hospitals or you're going into health centers and you're saying, please let us see your data. And they're saying, who are you again? And you're saying, you're going to hear about us. I promise you, we're great people doing great things. And they would say, great, come back to us in 2 or 3 years. It takes only the most perseverant, only the most resilient to be able to break through this area in the medical space, especially when you're talking about something as deeply serious as cardiovascular disease, and especially when you're talking about bringing AI, artificial intelligence, or stroke and machine learning into this realm where there has been so much disappointment before. And some of it is because of siloed technology, but others is just because the AI and the ML just wasn't ready to be able to give the results that were promised to so many people. So you're walking into a world of crashed dreams and you're saying we're coming from a different perspective. Our expertise, our domain dominance positions us in an area that a standard general technologist cannot possibly do. And they fought through that. And I love that. That was for me one of the main reasons because look, in the earlier stages of any form of medtech company, whether it's digital healthcare or whether it's anything else, there's always risk. And there's always risk as we're building because you're creating a new frontier. For me, when I saw your journey about how you fought through there without any thought of ever stopping, I realized that this was your life's mission. Like nothing else matters other than success in what you're doing right now. And when I say success, I don't mean $1 billion company or $2 or $5 billion company. They will be natural outcomes of what you're producing. I mean saving the world. Is it? Am I characterizing you correctly?
Absolutely. Given the personal experience. And see, what happens is there's a confirmation bias that kind of happens. So if you see a particular Corvette on the road, you suddenly start seeing more Corvettes on the road. It just happens. Like that, when I first got this heart failure, I never heard the word heart failure. You hear people clutching their heart, and then movies show a heart attack. But heart failure, the silent killer, nobody sees, understands that. And suddenly, when I looked around, there are so many people suffering from that, from ischemic origin, or which is blockage origin, or from viral infection. COVID is one such. In fact, one of the most serious side effects of COVID is that people die of heart disease after they have recovered from COVID.
Wow.
and it has happened to big people. So COVID is actually causing a problem. And when I went and asked the treatment centers of COVID, do you take a cardiac MRI at the time the COVID patient is released from the intensive care? They say no, they don't. The thing is that would taking a cardiac MRI at that point in time and qualifying the problem, screening the person at that point in time before release, and tracking it through the next couple of months make a difference? Sure, it would. The protocols simply don't exist. Now, we
Wow.
have to become part of that screening as well. So today, cardiac CT uh, angiography is being recommended by the topmost cardiologists in India and in the world as a screening tool. When you say of diagnosis, it's just a fewer people who have already been afflicted. But once you say screening, suddenly the market expands.
Mm.
It's like that I am doing as part of the company joining formalities, you do a treadmill test or a echocardiogram. Would you do a cardiac CT at that point in time for a 40-plus-year-old? So suddenly that opens up a whole possibility for improving the care, because one of the biggest things in cardiovascular disease is catching it early.
Mm.
Catching it early requires better screening techniques, which correlate very well with the other cardiovascular risk factors. That correlation has to be built, and AI and ML play an invaluable role in finding those patterns. And then, as Dr. Eric Topol mentions, it is pattern matching is the most important thing that we need right now. That's what intuitively a cardiologist and a cardiologist does. So that part of the thing is what we are trying to build. Adding to that, one small thing that has happened is that ultrasound has been consumerized. With a portable ultrasound, you are now gone consumer, and FDA has approved one of the first companies in 2020 on using ultrasound at a individual level. So this multimodality imaging and AI on that, we believe, can expand the screening and diagnosis early enough to impact the outcomes at a later stage. And
Great.
that's what we are gearing for.
Great. So, and this is what I want to get to now. So, we've ascertained there is a huge problem in the market, in the world, in human beings, right? We've ascertained that the timing is absolutely right to do this. We've ascertained that the market is huge from an investor's perspective. It's actually them. So, it's everybody, right? And we've also ascertained that whoever brings the right product to market is going to be able to build an absolutely enormous company. Can you speak to how much money you've raised so far, but also a little bit about the secret sauce, a little bit about the epic insight that you bring that is different to all of the other AI and ML solutions? I understand that you've built it into the workflow of the cardiologists themselves, and I understand that you're also allowing for other technologies to come in there too. But speak a little bit more specifically as to why investors should be so sure that what you're building is the game changer in being able to take that early diagnosis of cardiovascular disease and maybe tie into that how early you expect that diagnosis to be compared to where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we discussed earlier, it is a lot of small things with multimodality imaging, which is why we call ourselves HeARTHealth, and the product is named OneCardio. And the part is that being able, if you see many companies, they will focus either on ultrasound, the echocardiogram, or they focus on the MRI, or they focus on the CT, and they focus on a single disease because that was the need of the hour at that point in time, given the available technology. What we have been able to crack or build into our whole process is that it's not either or, it is using the guidances being issued by the ACC, the American College of Cardiology, the American Heart Association, or the European Society of Cardiology, and tying it with the ICD-10 codes issued by the WHO, and being able to string them together into a continuum. So the whole idea is that how do you leverage technology to do both the what is called the diagnosis, intervention, and management as part of our workflow seamlessly. And some of the stuff that we are doing from the early uh, disease diagnosis that we are building is that putting that information at the right time in a quantitative way. See, most of the earlier techniques relied on qualitative information, whereas quantitative imaging and imaging biomarkers are proving to be an effective method for improving diagnosis. So we are now including those into our imaging and presenting that quantitative information that gives the confidence to the cardiovascular radiologists and the cardiologists in the specific case of the heart to be able to do a diagnosis very fast. So what took 20 minutes or more, and that's published results from a study very recently, we could absolutely do it in 5 to 7 minutes. So, which means that A, you get better accuracy, given that you're able to identify the lesion very accurately, and B, you're able to quantify it, which means that the decision making consistent with the clinical guidelines can be made faster. And these two really improve the quality of outcomes.
Okay, beautiful. I love it. And then, so I know in the world that we are in, which is the clinical world, we can't say that this will improve prediction by 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, 4 months. And I know even more that we can't put this in any written documentation. But what's your feeling as to the time difference that can be made through early diagnosis by bringing your technology to market?
We are 6x faster. We are
Wow.
anywhere between 4x to 6x faster, many cases 6x, simply because that's the time that it takes for them, for the cardiologists and the cardiovascular radiologists to do their job, which means that what you're doing also is you are bringing more patients in. So there are two problems. One is the time it takes to diagnose and the wait time. The wait times, even with great access, there are wait times. You can shorten the wait time, which means that the disease progression is arrested much earlier.
Right.
So these two are critical for outcomes in cardiovascular care, and we are attacking both. And that's how that integration in the workflow that I mentioned earlier is leading to that improved outcomes or
Incredible.
improve the outcomes, which is happening today with the experts. We want to bring that expert knowledge into the hands of every cardiologist and cardiovascular radiologist.
Wow. Okay. Absolutely fantastic. And then the early tests that you've done, can you speak a little bit about those as well? Where you've done those tests, what type of data that you used, and what early results are you seeing?
Okay. So we have been doing these tests at one of India's leading uh, uh, center for heart failure, and the heart failure registry is maintained at a place called the Sri Chitra Institute of Medical Sciences and Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they have an interdisciplinary background of trying to blend technology and medicine together. And they're directly under what is called as the Department of Science and Technology, which is like the NSF, right? And that's one place where we went, given that it's operating at the highest level of global participation in the cardiac care segment. They also are the top center for neurology in India, and that's an extension that is Definitely not too far-fetched to think about at a later stage. So that's one center. The other center that we are doing our clinical validation is at the what is known as the KMC, the Kasturba Medical College, Manipal,
Hmm.
which is the place where some of the leading OEMs, including Philips, conduct their clinical validation for bringing their technology into South Asia. So these two major centers, which are already doing it, uh, we have gone to them as the tier one institutions. Plus, we are looking to do the same, repeat the same stuff in the US, some of the best cardiac care centers, and in Germany, and in Europe in general, and in UK. So we are doing the validation in India, publishing the early study results, and the kind of results that we have got so far, like I mentioned earlier, uh, 90% accuracy with
Amazing.
respect to getting the segmentation right, uh, compared to uh, the older generation of machine vision, where the segmentation would fail in 50% of the cases because
Mm.
you are using what is called as feature engineering, thresholding. Feature engineering and thresholding is a manual effort. I decide and set it. Machine learning, it is statistical. It learns continuously and sets the threshold accordingly. And what is amazing from the results that we have got is that it's consistent across data sets. So whether it's a data set that's thrown at it from our training center or it is an unseen data set which the machine model has never seen. Once it is curated and ingested into the system, boom, 90% accuracy. So that's
Incredible.
the kind of stuff that we are seeing with deep learning. And we believe that is consistent because our models themselves have been trained on uh, South Asian, Caucasian, and African American datasets from the word go. We have datasets from Canada, US, Germany, and India into the model already.
Incredible. And then so we, and obviously for everybody who's listening, Ravi and his team are based over in India and have started all of their tests over there, which have meant that they've been able to do this with a very small amount of money so far. So in these last 2 minutes or so, can you speak to how much money that you've raised so far, how much money you're going to raise in 2022, and what your unicorn path looks like. So, as you're looking forward, what is it that you're going to build this year and next year and the year after? And include in there any expansions maybe to the US or other countries as well, because this is a global problem. But I really want investors to walk away the same as I did when we made the investment into you, knowing what that path to building this monster company is going to look like.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's very interesting part. We have been able to do it for as it is $250,000 so far. And that's simply because we are all from that background and there's a huge talent pool available to us. And that's what we are leveraging so far. And we are starting with one model. The idea is that once it's clinically validated, we take it to US and Europe using the SAMD. It's a class one or a class two device as a decision support system. And uh, the pre-submissions and others can be covered in the coming year. And then we hope to be hitting the market by the end of 2022. To take us to that, naturally, suddenly the expenses raised. We are looking to raise roughly about 4 to 5 million, we call it 30 crores. That's about 5 million in 2022, so that we can leverage that expansion in these two geographies and launch into the market. And with the disease that we have in our portfolio right now, which is for ischemic heart disease and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which are two the largest disease. This the ischemic heart disease cover about 40% of the medical imaging needs for cardiovascular disease. So that's our immediate goal, to take what we have to market. Parallelly, we are also building models for the ultrasound. Ultrasound being a great screening tool and a necessity for starting early, and it's the most widely used tool by cardiologists. So getting that tool first into the hands of the cardiologist is an imperative. The R&D is well underway, and we have some early results from that, which we want to productize and take it to the market in the subsequent years. In that manner, what we're doing is trying to build modality by modality: echo, CT, MR, and fluoroscopy, for which we have already got OEM partnership underway, and taking these to both Europe, UK, and US. Now that Europe and UK are separated, going to these three is the immediate goal, because the problem is today. It's not tomorrow. It's already the largest killer, and the need is immense. So that's the immediate goal. And once that happens, the linking to the EHR and the part of the care continuum in the next 2 to 3 years is what is the goal. We have a background. I have built a health and wellness startup way back in 2008, Zoom Life, which was one of the first iPhone apps for health and wellness in the US, based out of Los Gatos. And that's the ultimate goal, to taking us into that unicorn status, to increase the base. First, geographic expansion with what we have today, and adding various ICD-10 codes so that it's part of the billing systems of the payers, and then expand to, at a later date, to other organs, is the the next frontier. But we have enough on our plate right now for heart health, focusing on the heart. There are 100 different heart disease. The ICD-10 codes, I00 to I99, just cover cardiovascular disease.
Amazing.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so you all hear it. Look, we all know that healthcare companies are going to become the biggest companies on the planet within the next 5, 10, 15 years. The history has already been written. You've heard from Ravi and his team, the Dragon Slayers here, about dealing with the number one killer on the planet. And they have a team that are experienced in, have knowledge about, have been building, have positive results back from their POCs within the existing hospitals that they've been trialing this at. They are ready to absolutely sprint. So whether you're an investor in the US, or whether you're in India, or whether you're global, this will have been a killer that has touched you somewhere. For people who want to connect with you, Ravi, what's the best email address to be able to catch you at?
It's ravi.chukula@hearthealthtech.com. It's first name dot last name at healthtech.com. I'm on LinkedIn with the same. So yeah, that's great to reach out on email with that ID, and also on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. And people can also catch me as well if they want to catch Ravi. They can also catch me at Brian, Brian, at expertdojo.com. I'm very happy to pass it along. As I said, we're not promoters. We are investors. We put money into heart health. We absolutely believe that this is going to be the future that is going to finally give us a chance to win the battle against cardiovascular disease. Ravi, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you even more for allowing us to invest into your company. We are just beginning on this journey, and I'm looking forward to every minute.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks to Expert Dojo and your full support. Thank you very much.